Welcome to the Leader Lifter podcast. Short conversations to lift you up and encourage you wherever you lead.
So welcome to the latest podcast of the Leader Lifter. My name is Kevin, and it's a real joy and privilege for me to share with you at this time. It's been a little bit of a delay since the last episode for the end of March and the month of April. I've been doing a significant amount of traveling. I don't normally do a lot of traveling these days, but this season I was. So I was hoping to get a number of videos done and get them ready to roll out before I left. But in order to be prepared to be out of town, I haven't been able to do so. So excited to jump back in, and I want to dive right into today's topic because as I've been traveling and talking to different leaders all over the place, one message I'm hearing incredibly clear from lots of leaders, whether they're in churches, whether they're in the community, whether they're stay-at-home parents, whether they're students, whatever leadership they're providing into their environments. The big message I'm hearing from so many people is that leadership is hard, and so many people are dealing with discouragement. They're dealing with discouragement in their leadership. And again, that could be at any level. And just if I look at our context here as a church, as an example, I know it's very easy for the staff to feel discouraged. I know it's very easy for life group leaders or kids ministry leaders or fusion leaders or different, our deacons, our elders. I know just as we're trying to discern and trying to strengthen our church and walk alongside people, it can be hard. And it can be discouraging. And if I was really honest with you, I know that there are seasons in my own leadership where I give in to that discouragement. And the number one way that discouragement plays out in my life is through complaining. Yes, it's a very ugly word, but more and more leaders, as I'm talking to them, I'm seeing a big increase in our complaining. Now, I don't know if that's because of our social media culture and our internet culture, where suddenly we feel a lot more comfortable whining and complaining about the world around us through social media. But whatever it is, I'm seeing this increase in complaining in order to deal with our discouragement. I recently listened to a leader named Larry Osborne, and he was doing a talk on shepherding in the church. So how do you be that spiritual leader in your church context? And he shared something really incredible. And I have been looking at my own life and my own leadership on how I can implement what he shared. And so I just want to kind of walk you through the process that I have gone through on dealing with discouragement, dealing with the fact that leadership can sometimes be hard, and how do we not become leaders that give into complaining. And the number one thing in order to deal with this is I have implemented something called the no complaining rule. The no complaining rule. I was originally going to call it something else, but the title I had for it wasn't appropriate for general public usage, so I wanted it to be a little bit more clean so that everyone can use it. But it's this idea of the no complaining rule. When I am dealing with a leadership situation, in my role at the church, in my family, in my community, in my volunteer groups, in my hobby groups, whatever that looks like, when I'm faced with an issue, how am I choosing to respond? And the no complaining rule is helping me to basically put a system and check and balances into place to ensure that I'm not responding through complaining, even when it's hard, even when it's discouraging. Let me just give you a few examples of how this has played out before in the past. Let's say, for example, here at the church, we wanted to roll out kind of a new initiative, but there's not enough money to make this initiative happen. It's very easy to just complain. Well, if only there was more money. If only the congregation was more generous. If only we didn't have building responsibilities. If only, if only, if only. It's so easy to complain about what we don't have. Same things with other things that might be going on. Like we see more and more new people coming to the church, but we're not able to mentor them. We're not able to disciple them because we don't have more leaders to lead life groups, as an example. And again, the default could be, What's wrong with these people? If only people would care. If only people would step up. If only people would lead. It's very easy in situations when we've got difficult decisions to make and times when we're feeling a little bit discouraged, it's very easy to complain. Can't get things moving. This building isn't good enough. My budget isn't good. People won't attend. People won't commit. Whatever that looks like, it's so easy for this to cling into our hearts. So what the no complaining rule forces you to do as a leader, regardless of what your level of leadership is, whether it's, again, in the community, in a volunteer organization, in a church, in your company, in your family, whatever that is, the no complaining rule does this. It forces you to ask other questions. The no complaining rule forces me as a leader, will force you as a leader to ask other questions. Instead of just brushing it off and complaining, if you feel led to be leading something, you can't just be complaining about it. You're the leader. You've got to figure out how to punch through the problem that's presented to you. So I break this down into 3 different categories on the types of problems that I experience. And so I'm going to use these as an example and how this no complaining rule can really help shift our mindset and actually help us to succeed and be even better leaders. So these 3 categories, I break it down into people, facilities, and money. Just as an example, the no complaining rule, how this can play out with people, facilities, and money. So let's talk about people first off. Very, very rarely in all my years of leadership, whether that was in the computer industry, when I served as a computer consultant, when I oversaw a team of computer consultants, whether that was when I worked on my own as an independent consultant, whether it's been in ministry in the church, very rarely has a problem truly been because of people. And when I mean people, when I'm talking people problems, I'm talking maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years, I can reflect and remember a problem that was really because of someone's incredibly poor attitude or incredibly poor performance. 2 or 3 times in 20 years. Most of the time, we don't truly have people problems, we have leadership problems. We don't have people problems, we have leadership problems. So when my heart wants to complain about people, oh, they're not generous, oh, they don't care, oh, they won't listen, oh, they won't, whatever that is to step back as a leader and ask yourself different questions. A great question to ask is, have I led them well? Have I led them well? I remember as an example when my church was here at Greenbelt was looking to go from 1 Sunday morning service to 2 Sunday morning services. And there was some tension with that because, when you only have 1 service, everyone feels like they know everybody, everyone feels like they're all connected, and just starting a conversation about splitting that up, that made people feel like they're never going to see their friends again, and that had a possibility of creating a lot of tension. So instead of just jumping into, oh, the people don't want, and just complain, myself and our leadership team were very intentional to ensure that we were leading well, through the process, that we're having conversations with people, asking them real questions. It's like, well, why do you feel like you're not going to know people anymore? Do you truly know everybody who's attending this church? The reality was, when you started asking those type of questions, is people actually only knew a very small group of people. And as new people have come, they haven't known these other groups of people. And so people didn't actually know as many people as they thought they did. So that's the first question, is have I led the people well through this initiative that we're trying to roll out as leaders? Another question that I have to ask as a leader is, have I made my expectations clear? Have I made my expectations clear? Again, it's very easy for us as leaders to kind of put people in place, give someone some responsibility, whether it's in a kids ministry or a youth program or working out in the community, and we assume they know what we want from them. Because we're busy and we're great, we've got someone to fill out the checklists we've got all these volunteer roles we need to fill, and we filled them, so we tick off the boxes that all those roles have been filled, and now we assume they're doing what we want. But have I made my expectations clear? I'm the leader. I'm the one setting up the parameters. I'm the one setting up the vision and the mission and kind of instilling the values into our organization. So if I've not made my expectations clear and someone isn't meeting my expectations, that's not a people problem, that's a leadership problem. So again, the no complaining rule allows me to ask myself these important leadership questions. And another great question that I have to ask myself all the time when it comes to the people that I have the privilege and the honor of leading is I have to ask myself, am I running ahead too fast? Because within my organization, the way it works, and it's probably very similar to your group or your organization that you're a part of, I'm the staff person and everybody else is a volunteer. And so I eat, breathe, and live this place. Like I love this church and I'm thinking about it and praying about it pretty much all the time. But I know that's not everybody else's world. They have other full-time jobs and other commitments, and this is a part of their world, and they love, being a part of the church family here. But they don't think about it as much as I do. They're not looking at it as much as I do. So I can tend to go so far ahead of people. And then people are kind of back here still trying to process everything, and I could be like, come on, catch up. So how am I, as a leader, ensuring that I'm leading people well through the process? So again, the no complaining rule when it comes to people, ask yourself some good questions. Because I guarantee it, very, very rarely do you truly have a people problem. You usually have a leadership problem. Again, how does the no complaining rule work when it comes to things like facilities? I was actually just on the phone with a good friend of mine earlier today who's desperate to try to find some storage space. Now, storage space, if you want to pay a lot of money, easy to find. If you don't have a lot of money, not so easy to find. So facilities can become a big issue for a lot of community organizations, a lot of charity organizations, a lot of churches, and even groups and different things in the community that meet in people's homes. Facilities can play a big part, and it's easy to complain. My building isn't, my building can't, right? And so when it comes to facilities, I've begun to ask myself and getting our team to think like this, have I thought outside of the box? What tends to happen when we have facilities is we tend to think of the facility in the way we've always used it. And the longer you use the same facility in the same way, the more ingrained that's going to become. Let me say that just one more time. The longer you use the same facility in the same way, the harder it's going to be for you to think more creatively with that space. Like how many of us in our homes take our kitchen and go, wow, you know what, I should knock all of this down and turn it into a bedroom. We don't do that because that space was specifically designed to be a kitchen. But in a lot of our companies, organizations, these facilities are more generic. So have I thought outside of the box? Am I just stuck in a mold here? And because I can't think outside of it, then I'm complaining. So the no complaining rule forces me to think outside of the box. Another question it forces me to do is ask questions like, hey, have I actually brought in outside experts to have a look at the facilities with fresh eyes? I think that is something that is so incredibly important, that bring in friends, bring in colleagues from other organizations and have them look at our facilities in a fresh way, because we almost become blinded to the facilities because we're in it all the time and we can't even see it. So if you bring in that outside expert, they can really bring some great feedback there. And then the final topic, just in this no complaining rule, again, these are just examples of how it plays out, is in the topic of money, right? It's the topic of money. Like, how are we funding our organizations? How are we, especially if you're dealing in a nonprofit or volunteer organizations, where does this money come from? What the no complaining rule has taught me is to ask really good, important leadership questions like, do I teach about money? Again, in way of example, last year here at our church, we were coming up to looking like we were going to end our financial year with about a $56,000 to $60,000 deficit, meaning we spent $56,000 more than the money that was brought in. And it's easy to look at that data and go, man, the people aren't generous, And I said, no, we're not going to complain this way. I haven't actually taught biblical principles of generosity. It's been a long, long time since I taught about tithing and taught about giving. And so we spent 4 weeks teaching on the call that Christians have to be generous with their time and their money. And instantly we saw that number go up within weeks. And we actually finished the year with a little bit more money than what we spent not tons, but instead of a $56,000 deficit, we're finished the year with a couple of $1,000 surplus, which is amazing. So do I teach about this? Right? The other question is, have I thought about money creatively? Again, sometimes we get so used to, well, this is the way the budget's always been. This is where we've always allocated our resources. Again, sometimes through partnering with other organizations in your community, you can actually save money. I've actually really come to learn, as charity organizations, we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. There are other experts in your city, in your town, in your community, and you can partner with them, and they're already doing it, and it's significantly cheaper for you to partner with someone than for you to try to create this yourself and fund it yourself. So have you thought about money creatively? And then the last question I ask myself on this topic, so I don't complain about money, is, have I created margin? Have I created margin? Right? Sometimes in leadership, and again, it doesn't have to be this big organization. It can be just, in a small little volunteer group, and have you created margin in your finances in such a way that if a new opportunity shows up, if a new exciting venture comes forward that you can participate in, do you have margin in your budget? Do you have margin in your money? Do you have margin even in your own personal finances? If something exciting came up, you could do it. Or is your budget so strapped to the line, every nickel that comes in is spent, or maybe even you're spending even more than what you're bringing in? There's no margin there. And then finally, just in regards to these types of questions, it's great to ask the questions. It's great to journal on these things and ask yourself, and answer these things. But at the end of the day, it's not just going through the questions and answering them that's going to help you. Is now you need to do it. Now you need to do it as a leader. The no complaining rule helps you stop, take a good look at your leadership, and then do the work as a leader. The no complaining rule. This has really helped me. I've been growing in this over the last little while, and I really hope to implement this even more in so many areas of my leadership, because I've seen the value of this personally, and I want to encourage you in whatever area you're leading in, is find ways to implement the no complaining rule. We see a lot of leaders on social media, on television, in magazines, just complaining and blaming previous leaders, and it's exhausting. Don't be one of those leaders, because no one really wants to follow a leader who's just complaining all the time. They want to follow a leader who's leading, who's excited about their organization, who's proud of the work that they're doing. That's what the type of man and woman people want to follow. So I encourage you to look at this. And remember, leadership is not a burden. I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing an increase in people complaining, is we think of this leadership as a burden, as some kind of cross that we're supposed to carry, and that we're supposed to be miserable because of leadership. Leadership is not a burden. Leadership is a privilege, and it's an honor. And I have the honor and the privilege to serve here in my church community. I have honor and privilege to serve in an online ministry that serves and blesses people around the world. I've been part of costuming groups here in my city, and it's been a real honor and privilege to serve there. Never look at your leadership as a burden, but it's a privilege and it's an honor to be a part of that. So that's what I wanted to talk about in the latest episode of The Leader Lifter. Again, I hope that this is helpful for you. I would love to get some feedback and to hear how you personally deal with discouragement. You can do that either by emailing me at kevin@greenbelt.church, or you can put a comment in the blog post below or under the YouTube video. I'd love to hear for how you deal with discouragement. And again, my heart for doing these regular leader lifters is I firmly believe that we as leaders, we can lead better when we're just kind of lifting each other up and encouraging one another to lead incredibly well wherever we are called to lead. So God bless, take care, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks again for joining us on the Leader Lifter podcast. If you are participating in the podcast through YouTube or a podcast player, you can find detailed notes and resource guides for each episode at kevinpresso.blogspot.ca. We hope you enjoy the podcast and find it helpful. If so, please subscribe to the podcast, rate us on iTunes or Google Play, and share it on your social media with your friends. Until next time, thanks for joining us.